Welcome, more gamers. This is Doug with 2 Plus Tough, and today we are going to be answering a question from one of you. And so this is asked by Andy Hard, and Andy asks if the General's Handbook 1 is still worth buying. If you have a question that you'd like answered, go ahead and click subscribe. Leave it in the comments down below. I read all the comments and try to respond to as many as possible. It means a lot to me, and this is where I get a lot of my inspiration for videos. So let's dig in. Okay. So this video isn't going to be very long. It's very much an opinion, casual chat type thing. Basically, is the General's Handbook, the first one, worth buying? Well, that sharply depends on what kind of player you are. I'm going to be upfront. If you are a competitive tournament-style gamer, you don't care so much for the lore, the background, narrative play, anything like that, the answer really simply is no. This is not worth buying. If you have it, sell it for cheap, please, because there are people who would like it. So, I mean, throwing that out there, again, competitive play is totally legit. If that's what you're into, that's awesome. It's not tournament level stuff, is not really my thing, but if you enjoy it, you should do your hobby that way. The General's Handbook 2017 is very heavily focused on competitive and matched play, and so I think that is where you'll find a lot of the meat for your hobby. Now, the argument can be made that the first General's Handbook isn't really good for narrative players anymore either, and their reasons that they give is because, one, Path to Glory is now its own thing, updated and expanded, so that whole section is kind of worthless a little bit now. The second reason that you see a lot is because they moved away from the map campaign system that's in there, simply because I believe Firestorm is what it's called. It's up for pre-order tomorrow, and so that's going to be its own map campaign thing. I think they were testing the water. So those are two pretty huge sections of the first General's Handbook that are going to be fairly irrelevant pretty soon. So, and to those kind of criticisms, I tend to agree. However, I still think there's a group of gamers, specifically for Age of Sigmar, who the first General Handbook severely benefits. Preface with this is the two kind of people that I'm really looking at is small club for fun players and new players specifically. The three things that are in the first book that we haven't seen really anywhere else is you have your tree campaign. This is phenomenal. This is if you and a couple of players, or just one-on-one, want to create a series of games that have a tied narrative. Now, the example they give is, I think it's Seraphon and like Bloodbound or something like that, but you can modify the missions and the storyline to be whatever you want. And really what it is, it's just a if-then statement campaign, right? You have a game. If this guy wins, you go here. If this guy wins, you go here, and so forth, and kind of gives you this diagram of how you can structure a small mini campaign. Nothing else quite does that yet. As far as we know, Firestorm isn't going to contain that. And so what this is you can just pick a location in the Mortal Realms, develop a story, name some characters, and just go. Between 3 to 5 games, you'll determine, kind of the conclusion of the story from start to finish, and that is really, really fun. My favorite games are the ones where you link together just 2 or 3 games, right? And winning one has consequences on the other for whoever wins. I really love that stuff. It's why I was so excited for the Siege Warfare rules, but they didn't really include this kind of stuff in General's Handbook 2017. In fact, I love the idea of getting the 2 handbooks and kind of combining them, so you can say, we're going to have a Siege Warfare mission, and that determines what happens inside the castle that we're sieging against. If the defender won, he gets reinforcements for defending. If the siege guy won, he gets reinforcements for attacking, and things like that, where you string together these games that have consequences on one another. If you watched my review many, many moons ago about the General's Handbook, there was actually a standout as my favorite section because it guided you how to do tree campaigns. Now, the next section is the ladder campaign. I point this out because if you are a small gaming group and you just want to have a little friendly league of people who regularly come together, ladder campaign is something, it's not in the 2017 book, but it is in the original, where it's just kind of a format for saying, get a list of players, right? And then you're all going to fight to stay at the top, and at the end of the league, whoever's at the top gets a trophy or medal or just kind of bragging rights, whatever it could be. But it's a format for saying, okay, here's some structure, right? If you don't play a game in a week, you go down a space. If somebody beats who's ahead of you, they go up, and it's a little formula for how to determine who's the winner of the league. It's very, very casual. It's easy to, what it is actually, let me pause right there. If a new player comes to your gaming group and you say, hey man, this is a fun game, we're gonna have a great time. It doesn't matter what points level you play at. Why don't you just join us and have some fun? put their name on that thing or on the ladder campaign, and they feel involved. They may not have models, they may not have time to come, but they feel like, hey, there's something somewhere where I'm involved in things, and that really gains excitement. This is really, I think, important. It's only like 3 pages. I wish they had put it in the 2017. That encourages new people, new blood into the hobby. And here's the thing, while it's not so much a personal hobby like the tree campaign, where like you and a buddy create the story, this is really healthy for gaming groups. And I am really stoked about that, and I'm really sad that it didn't have it in the 2017, especially because it's so small. This is a great way to get new people in the hobby, bring them in, and kind of just recruit them. Say, hey, tell you what, why don't you just play with my army this week? We'll get you on the ladder campaign. General rule of thumb with GW is you always lose your first game, like you let the new person win kind of thing. Let them see kind of going up the campaign, they feel good. And you say, hey, why don't you grab a start collecting box and we can play at that level and kind of just escalate from there. And obviously they're not going to get to the top of the campaign if they can't play those sizes of games. But what they can do is feel like they're a part of something. And the last section of the old General's Handbook that I think is really, really useful, and you're going to have to let me fully explain myself before angrily leaving a comment, is the compendium section. Now, why do I say that? Well, there are still a ton of people who used to play Warhammer Fantasy Battles way back in the day that have all kinds of old school armies, and they look at Age of Sigmar and say, can I still play this? And while yes, the rules have been updated, they are available online, it is really nice to hand someone a book and say, hey, just check it out. Because when you hand someone the General's Handbook, the first one, you're not just handing them points and stuff like that, which have been updated since then because Tomb Kings need to be toned down. And yes, the rules are out of date. Yes, the points are out of date and they need to be updated. But what you're saying is, hey, there's a whole hobby built around this. Have this book, especially because it's cheap as chips now. They can not only see that, first of all, their army is included, that they haven't been deleted, and secondly, that there's this whole cool thing with all this other stuff going on. Now, of course, if they start gaming casually, you're going to want to move them up to kind of the updated stuff. But frankly, for a tool to get old players in the hobby, the compendium section and the tree campaign, I think, are really, really great. For getting completely new people, I think the ladder campaign is amazing. Keep in mind that if you don't want to buy the Path to Glory, the new book, or Firestorm, the map campaign generator thing, those sections are still here, so you can get by with them, especially if you just want to try and test the waters, see if your local group wants to try a map campaign, see if they want to try Path to Glory. These are great, like, dip your toe in type things, because the cost of it is relatively cheap. So to really sum up my point here, because the video is kind of getting a little longer than I wanted, do I think that people should still buy this guy? The answer is simply yes, depending on what you want to do. If you are a group leader and you want to get new people into your hobby in your local area, I think this is a must-have. I would honestly say if anyone's trying to throw it away or whatever, buy 2 or 3 copies. So you can hand one to an old player and say, hey, check out the fact that there's still points for your stuff, your models are still valid, maybe not in a tournament setting if that's kind of how you organize things, but you can at least include them in things in your group. And if you want to test the waters and see what the group likes in terms of campaigns and things like that, definitely valuable to have to test the water rather than spending money on a rule set that nobody wants to play. And lastly, if you want to coordinate tree campaign games, it's very, very valuable. Keep in mind that with the tree campaign thing, you can modify it to be a narrative event. You could say order versus chaos, and in this game, order won, so then we go to here. And so you can modify things for your entire group, not just one-on-one games. If you are a new player watching this, we have a ton of new players who leave in the comments like, hey, I just started, where do I start? And you see this like for, I don't know, $15 on a shelf, just grab it. It's really, really cool. There's a lot of cool art in there, narrative missions out the nose, fun stuff to get you started. You're going to have to reference something else for updated points, but if you're just playing narrative or open and like that, this is a great place to start. I can't stress enough how great this book pairs with the new General Handbook. It adds in a lot of the flavor and narrative stuff that I think is missing in this year's edition. That being said, what really seems to be the trend is that They're making the handbook, I think, more towards just match play. I think there's always going to have all 3 sections, but it's definitely geared towards that. Whereas supplementary products like the Path to Glory book and Firestorm are taking care of those more nuanced narrative and open play things. So Andy, I hope that answers your question and that you are satisfied with that. If you would also like to ask a question, click subscribe, leave it in the comments down below. I read, like I said earlier, every comment. I try to respond to as many as possible. You all are awesome and encouraging to one another. This is a great community we've built here. If you'd like to support me directly, in a link down below, you can head over to the 2 Plus Stuff store and grab a gaming mat for yourself. Me and a partner of mine got together, we designed our own Realm of Death mat, and it looks amazing. And all the proceeds of that go directly supporting me as a content producer, and I would love, love, love to do this full time. Go ahead and share this video with a friend, and I will look forward to seeing you next time in our next video. Actually, one last thing, spoiler alert, and this is like the thing after the credits. One thing I like about the other General's Handbook for new players, like if you're handing the old school handbook out to a new person, this one actually has the rule sheet in the back. For some reason, the 2017 didn't. It ended on the Ironjaw's allegiance abilities, which I thought was kind of a bummer. I love the fact that the rules are in everything. So this really is a one-stop purchase for a new player who's like, I don't even know if I like this game. Just give it to him or loan it to him or something like that. Get him in the game. So thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.